All right, hey guys, it's Luke, and just wanted to jump on real quick and talk about a post I saw on X the other day. Not sure who it was. They were referencing Gordo Byrne. Follow him. He's a really good follow, especially if you're a masters and older runner. Some really, really good information on there, kind of his own personal journey as well. But anyway, this person was referencing some of his work, but it's nothing. It's nothing really new. I just don't think a lot of people really have dove into it very much. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it's new to me. But maybe it is. I don't know. In any case, but this person had posted a chart of their 400 on there, and then um, there's a gradual decline. Let me go to that slide real quick. So essentially what you have is like for him, he did his 400-meter time. And then instead of going out to the marathon, it went out to like 10,000 meters. But all of his performances were under what would be predicted on a race equivalency chart. So this graph here, basically, you have as you increase the distance, no big news flash here, but as you increase the distance, the pace you can maintain for that distance is going to go down, right? And it's fairly predictable to some extent. So this red line represents, what the book would tell you, what the algorithm would tell you, right? What you should be able to perform at. And so what I will see a lot of times, and this person saw it with shorter distances, was basically what the red line is, in theory, versus what the dots are for their actual performances. And I see that actually quite a bit. And this person was referencing, they're like, well, it's, they think it's more for their metabolic fitness, right? They're basically burn a lot of carbohydrates versus their ability to burn fat at lower intensities, right? And we've talked about that quite a bit as well. We've talked about how being efficient at burning fat is going to promote better performance along the way. But this is, if you are a person who you map this out and you're like, wow, my race, I've run the 5K in X time, and it says I should be able to run a marathon in 4 hours, but I've only been able to run 4:15, and I've tried multiple times. What's the reasoning behind that? And so I've also done some stuff with metabolic, what I've always known as metabolic efficiency. And so that we've referenced that in the chart with, this is page 51 of my book, Kansas Marathon Method, right? And these are actual tests that I did way back when I used to have a metabolic cart. So I had one person who was pretty textbook, right? They started off, they burnt a lot of fat at low intensities, but as pace increased, the reliance on carbohydrates increased, the reliance on fat decreased, right? And so that was a person who did a lot of mileage. This person definitely ran 100 plus miles a week. Were young, probably had a faster metabolism anyway, and they were a long time runner. So they've really developed their aerobic fitness, and their diet was really pretty solid as well, right? They didn't eat a lot of processed foods, a lot of processed, in particular, high fructose corn syrup, processed sugars, that sort of stuff, right? And on the right is another actual client who was actually much older, maybe only like 5 years older, but they traveled a lot for business. They were under a lot of stress, ate pretty crappy, ate irregularly, a lot of stuff going on there. A newer runner, and they were much lower mileage, inconsistent in mileage, hadn't been training for a very long period of time. And you can see, like, when they started out, they're already burning more carbs and fat at a very low intensity, and then it only gets worse from there. And so that's kind of along the lines that this person was thinking. And, it's definitely true. And if you go back to that, we go, well, how can we improve this? And one way to improve that is improve that ability to look more like the guy on the left than the guy on the right. You know what I mean? And the problem is, though, there's not really, some of it's just, you're kind of guessing to some extent. You can, these guys both were tested on a metabolic cart. They came into my office and we tested them, and that's what the actual data was. Now that was probably 15 years ago, right? And so there's a lot of improvements now. I mean, there's even metabolic carts now. I mean, there's a company that I've been looking at that it's more portable, that you could actually take it out to a track and have somebody do a test for you. But that's more of a commercial based medical grade type of situation. There are some things that are what's a company called Calibre, and I'll link to it either show notes or in the YouTube description. But it's Calibre, and I've never used it. I've only seen videos of it. I've only seen some other people on the social media use it. But it looks, I mean, it's for $500, and it's a mask you wear. Everything that is captured is right on the mask. Which, if you're familiar with a metabolic cart, you basically have a mask on, goes to a tube, and then the tube goes into this big box and analyzes all the gas analysis, right? And so you can do that without any hoses or something. So it'd be interesting to see. I wonder how comfortable it is. I don't know. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I just found it interesting that was an option now for $500. I mean, for what you're getting out of it, is pretty solid. So anyway, a good VO2 max will not only test your VO2 max, but also either your RER, your respiratory exchange ratio, or your respiratory quotient is what we're looking at. And all that is essentially a breakdown of how much fat versus how much carbohydrate you are burning at rest all the way through maximum effort, right? So you obviously your VO2 max, you're going to be at 100% carbohydrates. But so the I've done that. I have some posts on there, older blog posts, and I've done a couple podcasts on metabolic efficiency. But basically, I'm referencing in those things. I'm referencing what is in Hansen's Marathon Method book, and this is page 51, like I said. In any case, so what this guy said, and what I wholeheartedly agree with, is that essentially, if you want to improve that, one, diet, which is a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to get into that, but what I want to get into is what training can we do to improve that? And so if we really want to get better at it, what we need to do is improve our low intensity, right? And so you can shift that efficiency to maybe you're not going to go from the guy on the right to the guy on the left in 6 weeks. It's going to take a long time to do that. It's going to take months, if not longer, of really good, consistent additional training to do that. But once you do, you will see vast improvements. Just catch my notes here. So the simplest thing I think you can do to start to do that, especially if if you don't run a lot right now, and you're a little worried about running more, I think, and honestly too, and this even goes for higher mileage people who don't necessarily need higher mileage. They just need to improve this. I would say the first thing you need to do is just add more steps to your day, right? So like recently my wife just bought a walking pad. And so she goes downstairs when she's in between breaks of working, and she puts 5 to 10 minutes of walking in there, right? And she just accumulates more and more steps through the day. You could have, it underneath your standing desk or whatever the case is, to just accumulate more steps during the day. And that's going to improve just from a general health standpoint as well, just not even alone your running performance. So that's the thing. Add more steps during the day. If you can't do that and you run in the morning, go for an evening walk. Take the dog out, take the pets out, go walk with your kids, whatever. Get something in the evening if you're running, or if you're an evening runner, try to get up in the morning and do a walk in the morning. Anything like that will help add to this and help improve that, right? Because we're trying to go above rest into a very low intensity, what would probably be considered zone 1, and you're just adding this stuff that's going to accumulate more and more time, where you're going to be able to more efficiently burn fat. Again, if you're a shorter mileage runner, here's my level 1 I'm talking about. So if you run 3 to 4 days a week, why not add 1 to 2, maybe 3 days of dedicated walking? I've done that with athletes who were low mileage, and we've actually gotten them down, to low 4 hours in the marathon with only like 3 or 4 days running. But we've added a lot of walking or lower intensity exercise. Maybe, if they were on the bike, elliptical, whatever the case is, we're just adding that lower intensity work to accumulate more steps and more time that we're in that kind of zone one that you would reference. And then add more time to easy runs, and not a lot, right? Like if you run 30-minute easy runs, add 5 minutes to those, right? And get to 35 minutes and just boost that up, right? And if you can do this for several weeks, 4 or 6 weeks at the minimum, right? You're probably going to start seeing some improvement. You're going to improve overall your metabolism a little bit better. You're going to improve the ability to burn fat at lower intensities at much bigger percentages. This is all going to improve, which is ultimately going to help improve longer distance races. So once you get past that kind of initial setup phase, then what you can do is just ideally what you'd want to do is I would love to see easy runs built up to over an hour or more. That's a huge kind of threshold for that, getting those types of benefits. And again, we're not talking about being harder, easier, and being in that moderate easy run pace. No, these can be super easy, right? And if you're actually getting less mileage to run a little bit further time wise, I'm not opposed to that, right? Or if it's about the same, you're adding 5 minutes in and it's about the same as you were running harder, longer runs, shorter easy runs. That's not bad, right? And then ultimately, if you are in that 3 to 4 day easy runs, maybe we can eventually replace one of those dedicated walk days with a shorter easy run, and then start building that easy run up, right? And then also just keeping the what I would say the non-structured exercise walks, right? So walking the dog, going for an evening walk, walking on breaks, having that walking pad, all those things, anything you can keep those steps high during the day. Again, we're not talking about being intense, just getting those, low intensity steps in, you're going to grossly improve your ability to burn that fat. So again, this kind of ties into what we talked about in my last post about what the appropriate mileage was for marathons. And again, like a lot of you are underperforming in the marathon, but trying to add more mileage, but you're not fully developed at where you're currently at. And that's kind of what it ties into for me is that, okay, if we can maximize this stuff, right? One, you're going to be able to perform at the level you're training at much better. And then you're also going to be more resilient. And then you're ultimately going to be able to add more training, more volume, be able to handle it, which is then going to set you up for another breakthrough in your running performance, right? So that's what it is to me. Like, again, it doesn't have to be like you have to look at everything, right? And if you're lacking in this, then it doesn't necessarily make sense to just add a bunch more mileage at a higher intensity, or add more volume to your workouts, or add more volume to your long runs, because your body's just not ready to process it, right? And you're never going to fully, kind of adapt to that training level that you're imposing on the body, because this stuff hasn't been done first, right? And so that's something I would really think about, right? And I'm sure you can find local places to do a VO2 max test. They're probably going to be as much as what that Calibre would cost on its own. So, you think about it that way. If you plan on doing, 3 or 4 tests to kind of see where you're at over the course of a year, you're probably going to ultimately be cheaper to buy that Calibre than do a test. But, it is what it is. Or if not, or if you're just curious and want to see what you're going to do, go sign up. Because I know there's a couple of health centers around where I live that do that, and it is fairly expensive, but you are getting that kind of that medical grade. You're being observed by medical professionals and exercise physiologists and stuff like that. So there are definitely benefits to both. But yeah, so like I started off with, if you're underperforming in longer distances, it can be a number of things. It could be diet. It could be this sort of thing. Chances are it's probably a combination of those things. But this is just something to consider and really take a look at, instead of just assuming that I need to run more mileage. I need to drastically change what I am doing. And it also I also think of it this way too, because so many people say, using the 4-hour example, I was training for 4 hours, but I only ran 4:15. I need more speed work. Like, well, how do we know you need more speed work, right? Maybe this probably is a much bigger factor than you running more repeats at 5K pace or 10K pace, right? Because this is what's going to give you the most bang for the buck. And the more efficient you can make this, the much better off you're going to be. So I don't know. I just found it interesting. We've talked about it a little bit before, but it's just interesting seeing other people starting to talk about those things as well. And hopefully you can take some of this with you and maybe incorporate it into your own regimen. So, all right. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.